Hi, everyone. This is Ross here with my colleague, Sally, and together we are your counseling service team at SPSCC. Today we're coming to you to talk a little bit about a very human set of needs, one for a sense of competence and the other for a sense of control during these uncertain times.
Yeah, and in preparation for this, or actually what brought us to want to present this video is Ross and I were having a conversation noting that the various students that we're working with, we're noticing a pattern of like this increased anxiety and its connection to the environment, kind of the world that we're living in right now, which has a lot of uncertainty in it. Things continue to be uncertain for us. We've just had recent renewed kind of restrictions related to COVID. There's still political uncertainty. Maybe there's some movement, but not as much movement as some of us would like around social justice issues. So lots of uncertainty. And that uncertainty really taps into and rubs up against a natural human need for some sense of control. Anticipatory control, knowing what's going to be happening next and how am I going to manage that, and that feeling of competence that comes with knowing how am I going to manage this, that I can feel some impact and effect in my environment.
So really natural to use the resource most available to us in some ways, which is on our phones, going to the news, whether it's a dominant news source or whether it's the different social media sites which we can get our news. And never before in human history have we had some of the challenges, at least to this degree, that's associated with this way of meeting our need for competence and control. Two issues. One is the news feed is endless. 24/7, you can keep scrolling and new announcements will come up. And so there's, you kind of never reach the end. You never reach a place of closure. The other is that there is an algorithm that's observing your online behaviors on site. And this is very different from how we've received media in the past. And that algorithm is essentially forming a model of you, what you prefer, what you want, what you like, and then predicting your future behavior, predicting what you'll watch, what you'll tune into, what you'll spend time with, what you'll click, click, and share. So this has been compared to the analogy of driving. So if you're going to drive to Seattle, and that's the metaphor for going on to Twitter or another social media site, as you're driving, the algorithm is monitoring, what you're looking at, what you're interested in. And then it reformulates a model of you. So say, around Lacey, you come upon a car accident. And if you're like most people, even if you don't really want to look, when you're driving by, you'll slow and you'll look. It's just kind of a natural human thing to be drawn to those kind of, catastrophes in that way, just out of curiosity. The algorithm then creates a new model of you that suggests, oh, he or she wants to see car wrecks. And so you might see another car wreck. And if you look at that second one, as you probably will, the algorithm updates the model of you again. And before you know it, maybe by Tacoma, you're seeing just car wrecks all the way up, because the system assumes that's what you're most interested in, and that's what you like. You can imagine, that car ride to Seattle would not be very good for your mental health. I mean, you might look, but you're going to probably arrive pretty anxious, pretty distressed. And I think that's a pretty decent analogy to what can happen on social media as we try to seek control and competence.
Yeah. So let me make sure I really understand that, Ross, is with your analogy, like getting in the car and driving up to Seattle would be comparable to me, maybe feeling some anxiety, some worry about what's going on at the national news level. And so I go on my Facebook because that's where I get some of my news. And then I see a distressing news article. And so then then the system is saying, oh, clicks on and shares distressing news articles. So I'm going to bring up another distressing article along that same line, and I'm like seeing another car wreck. And so then it's really feeding my anxiety. And
Yeah, exactly. That's
yeah,
exactly right. And it's just because it's kind of exploiting a human weakness. To look at a car wreck is not something you really want to do, but you're compelled to do it.
But we tend to there's a lot of research about our negativity bias. We tend to orient towards things that are risk or negative, that indicate some stress or a threat in our lives. And so it creates this very myopic view where we start to look at the world through this little tube, rather than taking in all the information that's around us.
Such a great metaphor that what we're seeing is not necessarily untrue, but it's lacking context. It's kind of a distilled form.
Yeah, it's this very narrow view of what is going on in the world, both at a national level, and then that can prompt us to lose sight of what's going on in my world right here at a local level, in my life, at school, with my family, friends, my community. This might be a really good time to share the diagram that I'd come up with. What do you think?
Yeah. Sure. Okay. Yeah, I think that's really kind of lays it out here, this cycle that a lot of us end up in at these times, and
so this is a cycle, a little image that Ross and I put together to connect these ideas together in terms of living in an environment right now where we have a lot more uncertainty about what's going to be happening in the future on multiple levels, and how that creates anxiety for us naturally as human beings. And then what follows is our natural need to feel some sense of control and competency to be able to anticipate and manage what's going on, because that's a basic human need as well. But then where we get hooked into some distress is around then checking our news feeds in a way that then we read media, we read news that actually then amplifies that distress and kind of feeds the negativity bias. The algorithm is sorting for us to like click and share on highly emotional, reactive news articles. And then what does that do? That pitches us right back into heightened anxiety and a feeling of uncertainty. And then we're just in that cycle again. Yeah. And
so you had some really great ideas, for how to exit, involving the physical world, the real world, and involving local, zone of control.
Yeah. So in looking at this image, think about you're feeling maybe some uncertainty and anxiety. Naturally, we want to have that need for control and sense of competence, because as we feel more in control and competent, our anxiety lowers. So right here at the bottom of the diagram is where you can get yourself out of that anxiety loop. Rather than checking your news feed and then getting your anxiety amplified, and I'm going to stop sharing here, is then to exit the cycle at that checking your news feed point. And certainly it's important to be up to date on what's happening with the news, but to be mindful of your news diet rather than just consuming the news all the time. Perhaps to decide I'm only going to check the news once a day or once a week, maybe. Be very thoughtful about how frequently do I need to get updated. Rather than compulsively checking it multiple times a day in an attempt to reduce your anxiety, do some other things that can actually help you manage your anxiety better. And some of the things that Ross and I came up with that I've been talking to my students about is to get out of this tube view of the world and kind of open up your view of the world and to act more locally. And so to feel a sense of control and competence, you get that at a very local level. So for example, engaging in your studies and your classes. The most important thing you can be doing right now is just continuing with your goals towards school and the degree that you want, what you want to be learning at school. Looking around immediately with your family and friends. How are they doing well? Where can I get some joy and pleasure and fun? Who needs help in my family or in my community, in my neighborhood? There's a lot of evidence to show that we really get a mood boost and we feel more control and competence. We feel engaged when we help others. Perhaps maybe it's even looking at a social justice issue that you feel passionate about, and how can you get involved in a productive way with that at a very local level with policies, ways to volunteer in your local community. It's really pausing to look around at the three-dimensional world that you live in, the local world that you live in within your community, your family, and seeing the world for all its complexities there. That's a way to connect with what is good in your world, what's positive about the world, and where you can actually act and have some influence. And that is ultimately what helps reduce a sense of anxiety, sense of uncertainty. Even during times when things are relatively calm in our life, we live with a certain amount of uncertainty all the time. And so it's these ways of being engaged that really help us to feel empowered in our lives rather than lost in the uncertainty and out of controlness.
We realize that changing a habit like checking your news feed can be a little bit difficult. So, if you're having a difficulty with that and want kind of a customized conversation, feel free to come into the counseling service. We're available by Zoom. You can come in. Probably the best way is to look at our website through SPSCC main site, enter counseling services, and you'll find our website that lists our hours. There's buttons there to do our walk-in service, and you can also request an appointment by emailing counseling@spscc.edu. All right, thanks so much, everybody.
Thanks.